John Hewitt is an entrepreneur with over 50 years of experience and a franchising expert. John has grown a billion-dollar empire of businesses through franchising and has founded Loyalty Brands, which operates 8 franchise brands which help potential franchise buyers prosper quickly as well as achieve long-term success. In this episode, you will learn about Hewitt's over 50-year career buying and selling tax preparation businesses. You will gain insights into how he has built multiple successful franchise empires from the ground up, overcoming challenges along the way. John also shares his perspective on leadership, entrepreneurship, and his strategies for training franchisees and growing national brands.
I was cocky when I was young. I've always been in the age of bliss that most people turns out that they get beat down when they get to be about 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. Until then, they think they can do anything. They can be president of the United States. They can be Superman. They can accomplish great tasks. But everyone beats them down. Their teachers, their enemies, their parents. No, you can't do that. But somehow they never beat me down. So I always thought that I was going to be rich. I thought I'd make a few $1 million and retire, and found along the way that when I found my calling, when I found my industry, and I was blessed at 20 years old to find out what I wanted to be when I grew up. Most people don't know at any age that I've interviewed in the past, but it was in the tax preparation industry.
Okay. So talk me through the process of starting this tax company. Were you looking to grow it as big as possible, or was it just something that you're like, I'll start this and see how it goes?
Well, first of all, I started working for the 800-pound gorilla in the industry, H&R Block. When I was at the University of Buffalo, my dad called H&R Block. He was the CFO of a public company. And he called H&R Block and said, I want to buy a franchise for my son and I. And they said, in a suburb of Buffalo. And they said, well, we're going to put a company store there this year. Why don't you have your son take our tax course? Maybe he'd like to work for us. I took the tax course and I loved it. I loved working at H&R Block. I left college to join management of H&R Block. 12 years later, I was running 250 H&R Block locations. And so I really started working as a company employee at H&R Block. It wasn't until then that my dad interceded again, and he said, John, let's computerize taxes. And you're not old, Sam, you're not old enough to remember a world without computers. But
Definitely not, no.
He had bought one of the first Apple computers by mail, long before there was such thing as an Apple store. There weren't even 100,000 PCs in the country when he bought his first one. And he liked it better than the mainframe that was running his public company. So he convinced me to leave H&R Block. And in 1981, we built the first tax software for an Apple computer. And I got blessed again. No one wanted it. I tried to sell to H&R Block. They said, nah, we're never going to computerize. No one was computerizing the retail locations. And so that's how I got to be an entrepreneur, is first building the software. And then we got blessed and found a company here in Virginia Beach called Mel Jackson Tax Service. Mel had died. We bought 6 offices from his widow. We merged the 2 companies, changed the name to Jackson Hewitt, and we set out to become the #1 tax service in the country. H&R Block had 9,000, albeit we had 6, not 6,000, 6. And we set out I've always lived in this age of bliss where I thought I could do anything. We didn't get to 6, or we didn't get to 9,000, but Jackson Hewitt became a billion-dollar company with 6,000 locations, 23rd largest retail franchise chain in the country, public company. So did very well for ourselves with our first major retail chain. Then I
Right.
sold that, and in 1997, and I had a 3-year non-compete, but my non-compete didn't cover Canada because Jackson Hewitt wasn't in Canada. They were everywhere in the United States, but not in Canada. So, having grown up in Buffalo, I had done Canadian tax returns, knew the Canadian tax system. So, we opened Liberty Tax in Canada. And my second major enterprise, again, became a top 100 firm in Canada. When my non-compete ended in 2000, came back to the United States, and now I had to compete against my own name and my own software, my own system at Jackson Hewitt. And yet, not only did we grow faster than them, we grew faster than them and H&R Block combined. We opened 4,000 offices in 12 years. Again, a public company, again worth $500 million. And again, I sold the company, and now we have Loyalty Brands, which has 8 different franchise companies.
So you've done a lot in what feels and sounds like a very kind of short time there. I'm guessing it was in the space of 20, 30 years that you did all this. But
Well, no,
there's a
actually, I make it sound a lot. I go pretty fast. So in 3 minutes, I can cover my 54-year career. So my career
right.
started in 1969. I finished 54, and I'm in my 55th tax season.
Wow. So how did you kind of get these skills together? Because it was like, from the sounds of it, you were working for someone else. Your dad's like, hey, let's go start a business. Like, let's get you started on this entrepreneurial thing. And you haven't got much experience. You haven't got much knowledge of what's going on out there, but you settled on the tax thing. You focused in on the tax thing, but you've built and scaled, 2 massive companies, sold them or gone public with both of them. How did you learn how to do this?
Sam, in the United States, there's no CEO school. There's no college teach you how to be a CEO. It's called the College of Hard Knocks, right? You have to learn on the fly. And so I'm a student of business. I'm constantly learning. I learn virtually every day something new about business, and I'm new and improving. And I'm a fanatical competitor. And whether I was in sports or classes or playing a card game or I'm a chess master or in business, I'm always out to win. To win, I know I have to be the best. To be the best, I know I have to be improving. So I've always had this fanatical commitment to win. And I agree with it's actually a misquote by Vince Lombardi: winning isn't everything, it's the only thing. I agree that it's the only thing. And so the name of my book is I Compete. I Compete is because that's what I do.
Yeah, I mean, and when you're competing, there's a lot of challenges that you can come up against. But when you're a competitive person, your whole goal is to overcome them. So I'm wondering for you, in your 55-year career long journey, what challenges have you had and how did you overcome them?
In they say that people that are the most successful have made the most mistakes. And I agree with that. I've either made every mistake you can make in this industry or seen every mistake. So and you're right. The people that win, everyone gets knocked down. God doesn't put any person on the planet. I've never met any human being that escaped without adversity. Everyone has adversity. The winners just get up every time and keep going. It's easy. Most people fall by the wayside. They get beaten and they give up. And for example, when we think about just my blessed success in taxes, H&R Block has been a household name since I started there 55 years ago, and I've seen hundreds of companies try to go national against H&R Block, and there's only one guy that's ever done it. And I did it with Jackson Hewitt. And then I did again with Liberty. And now I'm doing it a third time with ATEX. Other hundreds of people have tried and quit because it's just incredibly challenging to grow something from zero to top 100 retail chain in this country. Again, only a few people have done that, and so it's overcoming obstacles. Success isn't how the height you achieve; it's the obstacles you've overcome.
Yeah. And along with that kind of thing, when you are trying to be a high achiever or a very successful person, you have to think differently to the people around you. And you said there that H&R Block, a lot of people have tried to compete against them, but they're not able to. But clearly you are able to, and you've done it time and time again. So I'm wondering what kind of strategies or ideas is it that you have that allow you to compete, and not only to compete, but also win?
Yeah, I can tell you, I've invented a bunch of things in this industry that might seem simple to you or to the observer, but when I introduced them to H&R Block over the years, or either when I was there and they denied me, or when I left, and sometimes they've copied me, not always, but I've invented a lot of simple things in this industry. For example, in about 1976, I was a district manager running 20 locations, and one of my office supervisors came to me and said, and our average fee back then was about $25, and she said, I have this one customer that has referred like 7 or 8 people. I'd like to do something for them. And she said, how about if we start offering $5 cash for any time you refer someone to us. And I ran that up the chain. I sent it to my boss. He sent it to Kansas City headquarters, and they denied it. That they know you can't do that. So years later, when I started Jackson Hewitt, 5 years later, that's the first thing I implemented, is a $5 send a friend, refer a friend campaign. We called it Refer a Friend. And then we expand as our average fee. Now our average fee, 45 years later, is $250. And now we give $50 after we had implemented at Jackson Hewitt about 6 or 8 years, then H&R Block copied it. And they have their own send a friend. We have refer a friend, they had send a friend. So others copy me as I invent things in the industry. Very, very simple, basic, good ideas. And much, in Made in America, written by Sam Walton, he said, you don't just learn from your competitors. You learn from every consumer experience. When you're on an airplane, in a hotel, in a restaurant, you learn from examples of other industries. You don't limit your learning to your competitor. And so I've taken lessons I've learned over the years from my competition, but mostly it's from other consumer experiences, and bring it back into the industry. You always have to be attuned to improve. Again, I'm fanatically committed to win, which means I have to have the best system, which means and the best system has to be improving.
Yeah. Yeah. And being customer focused is something that a lot of successful people do, because a lot of people will focus on the product. But, if the customer's not happy with the product, then you have a problem. And if the customer's happy, the product is, kind of secondary to that. But also what you said here is kind of something where it's like people have an incentive to recommend you because they're going to get paid. Why would that not make sense? And you come away from that and gone, well, I can see the sense in this. Let me try it out. And sometimes it takes for someone to take that risk of, well, technically I'm giving away some of my profit, to see it working. then other people kind of join along. But when you're the idea machine, you're always one step ahead of the people that are copying you in the past, is what I understand.
Exactly. And again, I'm not the only person that's inventing. The beauty of a franchise system is franchisees are all, I brought in over 5,000 franchisees, 5,200. And so you got 5,200 people thinking every hour about how to improve the business. And not every idea is a good one. Even my idea I'm only right like 1 out of 7 times, let alone a novice, someone that just starts in the industry. But you got to listen, you got to be attentive and pay attention to the people that are on the ground. My companies have done 100 million tax returns, and I do one a year. So I've done 50, and they've done 100 million tax returns. I have to pay attention to people on the front line that know what the pulse of the customer is and give the customer what he wants, because it doesn't matter what my franchisee thinks, or it doesn't matter what I think. It only matters what the customer thinks. They are the driving force of, and there's no reason for a CEO or a board of directors or a stockholder if there's no customers. The customers are golden. They pay all of our bills.
I'm glad you mentioned about franchisees and franchising, because that is something that you're really focused in on at the moment. So aside from the 2 big companies that you've built, you're now doing this thing called loyalty brands. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if you can kind of talk to me about the kind of approach you take to franchising, as well as how you help entrepreneurs to build an empire with a franchise.
Yeah, the beauty of franchising is you take a person that wants to be self-employed, and they pay you money to work for you. So let's say someone like yourself, you're making 6 figures, you're making 60,000, 100,000, 200. Let's say you're making 100,000 a year, and you want to be self-employed. Well, you come to work for me for free, and you pay me to work for me. You're paying me ongoing royalties because I'm supplying you with brand name and the system of doing business and the methodology. I'm giving you the formula, the keys to the castle, the formula for success. Your job is to follow that system. But I get this 6-figure, or this experienced, talented person who not only is working for me for free, but they're paying me. I mean, what a racket that is. And when it works best, when you have the McDonald's and the Subways and the H&R Blocks and the Liberty Tax and loyalty brands, when it works best, it's an incredible vehicle to build rapidly and get national brand name. I'm well on the way to having 2 of my 8 brands today are well on the way to becoming national brand names. So I already have Jackson Hewitt. I already have Liberty. Soon I'll have A-Tax, a tax competitor to H&R Block, and I'll have Zoom and Grooming, which is a mobile grooming service. By the end of 2024, we'll be the largest mobile grooming company in the United States, if not in the universe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how did you go about picking what brands you wanted to have as franchises? Like, how did you spot these opportunities for, say, a grooming company and all the other kind of stuff you have under loyalty brands?
The key to me is, first of all, it's important, and then I'll give you the key. It's important to have a working model, that you have at least one location that's very successful, that you can't franchise a dream. You have to franchise a working model, right? So just like Ray Kroc, he took the McDonald's model, right? And so that's what I do. I find people like the McDonald brothers, and who can't go national, and I teach and I take that system, and then I embellish it, improve it, tinker with it, help them make it the best. It already was the best, but again, it has to be improving. And then the most important thing is that it has to be replicable by people without experience or education or vast intelligence. You can't have to be an Einstein, or you can't have to have 30 years experience or two advanced degrees, because there aren't that many people out there, and they're already working and making money and happy in what they're doing. It has to be replicable by a fairly smart, hardworking person with only a high school education. And if you don't, you're not going to have massive growth. You have to have, it has to be explainable and replicable to most people. If you need to have a PhD, you need to be brilliant, you need to be a great salesperson, you need these great skills, then you don't have a franchise, right? Because those people are already tied up in life, making all the money they want to make in doing something else. You need to be able to take someone with no sales ability and teach them how to get enough customers to have a great return on investment and the system to handle those customers. So being replicable is the key factor in a great franchise system.
Yeah, and something else that I think a lot of people struggle with, if you go to most business owners, they'll go, oh yeah, the business model was solid, everything with it's fine, but I'm just not getting enough clients. And it's like, okay, well then you have a marketing problem, because if you say the product is sound and your business model is sound, then you're just struggling with marketing. So I'm wondering, for someone like you that's got a variety of businesses or a portfolio of businesses, what is the kind of tips and tricks or tactics you use for marketing a business so that it can be successful and sustain itself?
Well, you're exactly right. That has to be part of the system. Indeed, that's the most important part of the system, is how do you find new customers? And what I've always done in my industry is that we always have the lowest cost of acquisition per new customer. So I've always been better than Block. When I was with Liberty, I was better than Block and Jackson Hewitt. And now that I'm with ATEX, I'm better than all three of them. So we've always had the lowest cost of acquisition per new customer. And so there is a lot to that. There have to be differentiators. So I don't have the time to explain everything, and much of it is competitive advantage, right? So, but I'll tell you one simple, and people say to me often, they say, well, don't you worry that your competitors are going to copy you? And I tell them, well, not even my own franchisees don't listen to me, let alone my customers, right? So I don't have to worry about my competitors copying me because my own franchisees don't listen. You would think that in doing this 54 years, that if you started and you were brand new to the industry, you haven't done it for 54 minutes, you would think you would be all ears and do it exactly what I said, especially with my massive success. But I think of my franchisees as children. They just don't listen. The successful ones that become millionaires, they listen 98 or 99%. The ones that, and I've had 1,000 millionaires and 1,000 that fail, and the failures listen less than 90%. They just why are you giving me money if you're not going to listen? So the key is in listening. And let me tell you one advertising thing that I invented that almost no one does in any industry, let alone no one does it in our industry, and people don't do it in almost any industry. And you have to have differentiators. If David went on the field with the same sword and the same shield and the same armor as Goliath, there wouldn't be any David and Goliath story. He would have been the 189th guy killed by Goliath. So he had to do something different. I can't replicate what my competitor does, or whoever has the most money and the biggest brand name will win. So you have to do things different. So one of the things I invented long ago at that we're still the only ones doing it at ATAX, and we do it in all our brands. We call our customers afterwards and say, how do we do for you? Now, other companies, virtually every company does survey. They'll say today they used to send them out by mail or give you a postcard or something to fill out, but now they do it by email typically, but it's not the same. What we've learned from calling our customers is they love being called, so our retention rate goes up. More customers return the next year. What I've learned, Sam, also in having doing 100 million tax returns with hundreds of thousands of preparers is our tax preparers aren't good at asking for a referral. They hate it. Most of them hate it. They're not marketing people. They don't want to ask for that referral. And so, there's a book called Guerrilla Marketing for Accountants. And in there, they did a survey of their customers and said, how many of you are happy? It was written by an accounting firm. And 95% were happy. And they said, well, how many of you recommended someone to have their accounting done by us? And only half the people, less than half, had recommended anyone. They said, well, why didn't you recommend anyone? Well, we didn't know you wanted more business. They simply didn't ask. And so we have one very personable person follow up after the customer's been in for 2 days. We send his tax return off. 2 days later, we ask them whether they're happy, ask them how we can improve. And when they're happy, say, would you explain our referral program to them? Our referrals go up 100%, 100%. And so we're getting higher retention, higher referrals, and we're finding out how we do. When in every business that you go to, if there's dozens of employees, there's some great employees, some average employees, and some employees that shouldn't be there, some very weak employees. And so we don't want to wait until April 15th to find out. We're growing and adding new employees every year. We don't want to wait until April 15th to find out someone's performing below average and not exceeding customers' expectations. We want to know on January 15th so we can either retrain them or get rid of them and give most of the business to the people that are satisfying customers the most. So it helps us in retention, referrals, and improving our service all the way through the season. So that's one of the things we do different than anyone on our competitors and almost any industry in the any firm in the country.
And something that you're quite uniquely positioned to kind of answer here is, you said earlier about all the best franchise owners or entrepreneurs that you've worked with are the ones that listen. The ones that listen to your advice and value your advice, and the ones that fail tend to not do so because they think they know best, or they're just kind of ignorant or something close to that. So what other qualities to you make a good entrepreneur or a good person to start and run and own a franchise?
Well, I'm sorry, but it's simply that. What I've learned, Sam, is it doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter how educated you are. It doesn't matter how experienced you are. My job is here's the operating manual, right? Every answer to everything. And of course, we're Americans. We never look in the operating manual. We always call up if we have a problem. But we're going to give you the answer to every problem, right? And your job is simply to follow that. So again, I have never been able to project whether someone is going to be successful because, of course, everyone tells me they're going to listen. And out of the 5,200 people I brought in, at least 500, if not 1,000, have said to me, John, I hear you. I get it. People don't listen, but I love systems. I love systems. I'm going to be the first guy that ever listened. And when people say that, I say, yeah, right. I've heard that hundreds of times before. Just listen. Every time you don't listen, it's going to cost you time or money or both.
And I guess for you right now, when you're building all these franchises, it's not like a one-time thing where you kind of set someone up and forget about it. You have to keep innovating and improving and, you know, nurturing these businesses or these little kind of offshoots of the franchise. How do you do that? How do you kind of make sure that you're looking to the future and, you know, growing these franchises and these people that are running them and owning them?
Well, you're right that this isn't you acquiring a franchise and then we never hear from you again. We have constant communication. I'm sure, I would guess, I've never heard anyone that does this. During the tax season alone, we call our franchisees twice a week and for a national call. And then once a month the rest of the year. And a new franchise that starts gets once a week until the tax season. They're on a call for a new franchise. And it's important to me because you've heard of no doubt heard of the telephone game, that if I tell someone something, then they tell someone something. And so by the time it gets down several layers from me, the most knowledgeable person ever in this industry, self-proclaimed, I've been doing this for 55 years, right? And with massive success, I'm the most experienced person ever. By the time it gets down from me and then filtered through several layers, it's diluted. So we have a national call. They get to hear from me personally. They can't say that so-and-so told me. That I give them they have national access to myself. And everyone hears the message so that it can't be misconstrued or diluted. So the constant communication. Communication, in my belief, is something you can never solve 100%. You just got to work and work and work. So we have training, we have ongoing phone calls, we have constant emails, we have updated training every year, conventions every year. I mean, just constant improvement. We have Top Gun training, we have Elite 18 training, we have, training for experienced franchisees, training for new just ongoing. I like to say we train you till you're blue in the face.
Yeah. And I think one thing you've kind of mentioned here, kind of indirectly, is the idea of being a great leader. And being a great leader is, you know, partly about communication. But I'm wondering, what else does it take to be the leader of, you know, such sizable companies? I like the fact that you said as well that you have this kind of national conference call where you're speaking to all these people directly so that your message doesn't get diluted. But what else is the things that you do that you think other leaders could learn from you in order to kind of be a better leader themselves?
You know, I wish it was more honorable things like integrity, honesty. But then you have great leaders that are horrific human beings, like the head of the mafia or Hitler. There's been some horrific excuse for human beings that have been great leaders, right? And so if you ask, just in my opinion, I wish it was just an incredible, great human being, but it's not a requirement. And if you don't have to have integrity, and you can be a ruthless leader that kills people, that kills millions, then what does it take? Well, what it takes, in my opinion, is you have to be somewhat of a visionary with a fairly accurate vision of what's going to happen. And then you have to be a great communicator of that, a seller of that vision. You have to convince all your constituents. In business, you have to convince your stockholders, your employees, your vendors, your customers. If you have franchisees, your franchisees, you have to be able to convince everyone to get on board. Get on board the Jackson Hewitt train, or get on board the Loyalty Brands train, the ATAX train, the Zoom and Grumman train. Get on board the train, because the train's coming. You're either going to get run over you're going to watch it go back or you're going to get on. So you have to be excellent at getting and keeping people to buy into your vision. That's the key element of a great leader.
And how do you come up with your vision, John?
Well, mine is pretty boring in the sense that I haven't invented an industry except for, my dad and I did build the first tax software for an Apple computer, but I had H&R Block with 9,000 locations. And the second largest preparer in the country at that time had 200. Now, it's pretty obvious and boringly obvious that there's room for a second player. There's always a Ford and General Motors and Toyota. There's always a McDonald's and Burger King and Wendy's. There's always room for 2 or 3 or 4 major competitors. There's no industry that doesn't have that. And so I kind of stumbled into the perfect place to be, is the income tax. We have H&R Block, a Fortune 500 company, and at the time they only had 25% market share. That 75% of the market was based on their mom and pop competitors, and I guess CPA firms too. So, but I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. So we look for opportunities like that. I haven't invented an industry. So in all of my companies that I've started, I'm looking at a larger competitor and just doing it. All I have to do is do it substantially or a little bit better than that competitor. 95% of the things that H&R Block does, ATAX does. We just do the little better. The difference between extraordinary and ordinary is a little extra. We just do the little extra that make us superior to our competitor.
And I'm glad you mentioned that as well. The fact that, there's always room for another big player, because a lot of people go, oh, this market is saturated. Oh, it's done. It's this, it's that. It's like, well, yeah, there's a lot of little people doing little bits and bobs, getting a piece of the pie. But if you want to come into an industry, aim to be the biggest person in that industry or the biggest company in that industry, and you'll find some success along the way.
Yeah, you just have to have your own niche and your own differentiator. Think about the real estate industry, if you will. Again, long before you were born, 60 years ago, there was no national realtor. There was no Century 20, and Century 21 was one of the first, if not the first. And they went to all these mom and pop real estate firms and said, you need to join us. Think about all the advantages of having a national company and getting national referrals. And when someone moves from San Diego to Virginia Beach, then you can have a realtor on both ends of the transaction. And you're going to get business from all over the country from another Century 21 dealer who's sending a customer down your way. And so now there are 15 or 20 national real estate brands, and they come about it from different ways. Most of the difference is the way that they pay the realtors. Some pay the traditional, well, you get 3% of the deal. Some you pay a monthly fee and you get then you get 80% of the deal. Or some pay you get everything, but I get a set fee, $300 every transaction. One of the latest ways to that help the company grow very quickly is XP Realty, where they give ownership. They're a public company, and they give ownership to their realtors, little shares of stock. And one realtor told me, I've been a realtor for 20 years, and I never had any equity. Now I have equity. So there are 15 or 20 national real estate companies. So you just you look for a differentiator that gives you a competitive edge.
And most of the most intelligent entrepreneurs I've spoken to, they always talk about the idea of growing through acquisition. And that's something that you were talking about quite early on in our conversation, is the idea of, starting a business is great, but buying one is even better. I wonder if you can kind of talk me through the acquisition process from way back when versus now, or, what's kind of different from then versus now? How do acquisitions change over time?
I think that, remember in my story that we bought Mel Jackson Tax Service from his widow. So we bought 6 offices. So my first venture into the tax preparation retail environment was an acquisition. And over the years, of course, I bought and sold hundreds of existing locations. The only thing that the major difference today versus back then is, back then acquisitions were harder because entrepreneurs were younger, right? 50 years ago, the baby boomers were just starting. So the people there were very few people that were retiring and selling their business. And and many of them back in the 60s and early 70s, they would turn it over to their children. Well, today that's changed in 2 ways. Number one is, well, it's changed in a few ways. Number one is almost no child takes over their parents' business anymore. That's gone out of style. And most of the businesses in this country are owned by baby boomers. The median age in most industries, certainly in tax and the tax industry, is in the mid-60s. And so there's a lot of businesses coming for sale. And so the age of the current existing business owners in the United States is far greater than it was 40 or 50 years ago. Plus, there's a new trend in franchising that's happened over the last 15 years. When I first started in franchising, the average people coming into the business were about 50. And then 10 years, 15 years later, went down to 40. And then 10 years later, went down to low 30s. Now there's a reverse trend where it's up over 45 or 55, but they're buying franchises for their children that are college age or just out of college. There's a huge trend over the last, and that's increasing every year, that the middle class and the upper middle class especially are buying businesses for their children.
Mm. And are they buying them for them to run, or are they just buying them for them to have a source of income and they can kind of oversee it or work within that franchise?
I'm talking about buying them to run. I'm sure they're buying them for absentee ownership, but we don't deal with those. We only deal with people that are buying businesses to be on the ground, boots on, roll up their sleeves. Those are the people that join our organization.
And I'm also curious because for some people, franchising is something they're knowledgeable about. They know what it is, but they don't have any idea how much it costs. So they're thinking, oh, do I need $500,000, $250,000? What's the kind of price range to get started in franchising, or to even, get the ball rolling to get a franchise?
In most of our systems, and we try to do this on purpose, it costs less than $100,000. Typically it's about $70,000 startup. You need $70,000 cash. And I find that much more rewarding than, some of these franchises like a McDonald's or a Dunkin' Donuts, it costs you millions of dollars. I find a lot more gratification in taking someone who's worth $400,000 and helping them become a millionaire than I do helping someone worth $12 million get $2 more million. I find it much more that's not life changing. To someone to go to 12 to 14 million isn't life changing. But when someone goes from 200,000 to 1.5 million, that's life changing, generation changing.
Yeah. And someone said to me last year, actually, they said, knowledge not shared is wasted knowledge. Like, okay, it's great if you learn something and use it for yourself, but if you don't teach someone else what you know, or, you know, synthesize all the information you know and teach someone else it, then you're doing not only yourself a disservice, but the world a disservice. And it sounds like you're really here to kind of help people become better people, as well as, you know, like you said, take someone from 400,000 in net worth to well over 1 million, which is a very noble cause, because most people wouldn't do that.
Yeah, a lot of people say, I'm 74 years old, and people say, well, why are you still doing it? You founded $1 billion company and another $500 million. You made people a lot. You made a lot of money, right? The equity in my companies I have been millions and millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars rather. And so I made people a lot of money, including myself. Well, when I was a kid, I was cocky and I thought I'd get rich, and I knew I was going to get rich. I didn't know how. I didn't know what I was going to do, and stumbled into the right thing. But on the way, I learned that the journey is the joy. And I realized that I thought I would make a few $1 million and retire. But then I realized, what would I do? And you're right. If I am at the peak of my knowledge and ability to help people, and if I went and sat in a corner somewhere and read books and played golf, sat on the beach, went fishing, all the experience and the ability to change the world and make it a better place is just being wasted. God didn't give me all these blessings just like my favorite story in the Bible is the talent story. And, I don't begrudge anyone from retiring, but they got to kill me to stop me.
Yeah. You tend to find a lot of entrepreneurs that kind of think to themselves, I'm going to get rich, and then when I get rich, I'm going to go sit on the beach. They go, actually, I don't think that's what I want to do. I think I enjoy this whole game of business. I want to keep playing this game as long as I possibly can. And you said very early on into our conversation that you're constantly learning, you're constantly trying to keep trying to keep up to date with what's going on. I'm wondering, where do you do your best learning? What kind of things are you learning at the moment? What's got your interest?
Yeah, I read a lot, and I listen to a lot of entrepreneurs and meet with a lot of people. But I don't just learn from people that are very experienced and have wisdom, great authors, and I learn from my own franchisees, and I learned how to improve from them. So from virtually, again, I don't just learn from my own industry. I learn from every consumer experience I have, and I learn what not to do, mostly what not to do, but occasionally I'll get a great idea. And so sometimes I'll sit in on a presentation. I had a great lesson from I learned a way of explaining something. I was at a convention about 6 months ago, and I heard the retired CEO of Sonic speak, of the Sonic organization. And I only listened for like 40 minutes, and I got a great story that I've used dozens of times since then on how to improve in business and how to explain it so that other people can learn from it. Because, Einstein says the making complicated things simple is a secret of genius, or the definition of genius, making complicated things simple. So a lot of times I'll come to epiphanies on just how to explain things better. I'll give you an example. 30 years ago, I was sitting in church, and the minister said, every one of us sins every day. And I thought, so my first reaction was, wow, I get that I do, but he admits that he does. And then I had a business epiphany about 3 months later that hadn't occurred to me. And I said, well, wait a minute now. In my company, we have, and that was when I was with Jackson Hewitt, we have our 10 principles. But if everyone violates God's 10 principles every day, Well, are they gonna follow Jackson Hewitt's principles every day? No. And so I immediately invented a new something I've never seen anyone replicate. But I said, I began putting thought into how do we enforce our principles? Because one guy can't do it, right? God can't do it. Jesus couldn't do it. John Hewitt can't do it in his company, right? No one can. Sam Walton couldn't do it in his company. So no one can do it. So how do you make it better? So we put all of our 10 principles on pieces of paper. So we created pads. So every employee got a pad of about 50 principles that you could tear off the sheet, and you put the person's name on it, and you would then check off which principle they either met or didn't meet, and then down at the bottom was an explanation, and we called them mission moments, and those people had them all over the offices and their cubicles, and most people put up the good ones, but some people even put up the bad ones where they learned a lesson where they had not followed the principles. And so I learned at church.
Okay, so for the people out there that want to kind of improve themselves as an entrepreneur, you're basically saying, look within and see what you're doing wrong and how that applies to your business or your life in general type thing.
Exactly. And it's so much easier in a franchise world where they're always complaining. No, you can't do everything right. And my favorite Shakespeare is to this above all that I know in self be true. So you need to learn as an entrepreneur. The easiest way to improve is to embrace criticism, and you never discount unless the person's a total lunatic. You don't discount what they've said, because Sam, if you and I disagree, you're a smart guy. If you and I have a disagreement, I'm not 100% right and you're not 100% right. So you might only be 2% right, or you might be 99% right, but I can learn from that discussion. And so every discussion and every argument and every criticism, you need to embrace criticism.
Well, John, I have a final question to ask you, and it's a question I ask every guest, but it's something that I think really kind of speaks to who you are as an entrepreneur and as a person. So the thing I want to ask you, John, is what is it about what you do that brings you the most joy?
Oh, that's easy. It's improving lives. Our mission statement is, and everyone out there can steal my mission statement. I didn't trademark it. It's our mission statement is 4 words: having fun, improving lives. And when we say improving lives, we mean our employees, our stockholders, our customers, the environment around us, the world. Our job is, but you got to have fun. Life's too short. If on Monday morning you're not looking forward to where you're going to the wrong place. So it's not really thank God it's Friday. It's thank God it's Monday. You're going to the right place. So my mission is simple: to have fun, improve lives.
Where can the people find you online?
Just loyaltybrands.com, and I'm JOHN, and you can email me. And anyone that on your that's listening can get a free copy of my book if you just send me your address to john@loyaltybrands.com.
Thank you for listening to People Explained. New episodes come out every Monday. We would appreciate it if you gave us a review on Apple Podcasts and shared this episode with a friend.